Okay. Hello, everyone that I didn't just see. I feel like between Big and the last class, I've seen just about all of you today already. So we can do away with the niceties. Hope you're all doing well. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we start talking about today's topic, which is going to be getting into the pie charts, let's do a little bit of mentoring recap and overview. I've heard from a number of you in some capacity on how mentoring is going, but overall, I wanted to see where we stood. How are we doing so far? Let me put it this way. How many of you have had at least one significantly positive interaction with your mentee? Good. How many of you have had one interaction already where your thought is, uh-oh, how is this going to go? Yeah. Okay. And I think that is something that we typically see. Dr. G has the mentees tomorrow for those that are in 547. So it'll be another week before I get to them. But let's focus on the more challenging aspects. What without naming names or giving anything away, what are some things that you guys are struggling with already or concerned about already, whether it's from a communication standpoint or an understanding standpoint? What are some red flags that you guys are seeing already?
I don't know. Maddie talked about this like 2 weeks ago with like not struggling about how to give feedback, not how to give feedback, but like what's too much, what's not enough. And I've been seeing like with my two people a lot of like copy and paste for research summaries. And like I keep like stressing to them to kind of like interpret the information versus just like regurgitate it. And that's like been like my biggest thing of like consecutively like given that same tidbit, especially in like the results. They're not like using like trend and stuff like that. They're just
Mhm.
like copy and pasting numbers. And then um for some of the other parts too, I can't think of it off the top of my head because it's running together. But I don't know if anybody's.
Yeah, no, I think that's a correction that needs to be given, and it needs to be given every time. That is something that what the challenging piece for you guys for something like that is understanding that while you're put in a position to give reinforcement and corrections, you don't hold the tokens yet, right? And that is something that is going to have a significant impact on your ability to shape behavior. So Laura, in that type of situation, you give the feedback, you keep giving the feedback. Their behavior may not change until they get points deducted, right? Uh, and and at that point, when for the research summaries in particular that I've reviewed already, my feedback almost exclusively has been related to their ability to incorporate your guys' feedback, right? So it's possible, Laura, and we can communicate in afterwards to verify this. It bothers me if you've seen it a couple of times, but it's possible that they're correcting it and turning it in accurately on my side. But it's going to get to the point. So for just so you guys know how I kind of did things. The first research summary that I graded, I gave them full credit if their responses incorporated, accurately and appropriately incorporated your feedback. All right. If they needed a correction for like everything, I took off some points or got them to criterion. And if they didn't incorporate your feedback, they got less than criterion. All right. So criterion being about 22 points. Over time, that's going, the scale changes to how many questions do you require feedback on. All right. So I'm looking at accuracy of your feedback, which is why I when I grade your work, and then implementation, but then also how much feedback do they need. So they may not get that first contingency if they accurately incorporated your feedback, but if we continue to see that, then it will show up. So if you're finding that you're giving the same correction every time, make sure that you're saying that. Like, just like last time, don't do this. Just like last time, change this, so that we see that very, very quickly. Okay. But it's definitely possible for some of these guys, as with any mentee, that when you're put in a position to give feedback, but are not necessarily given all the tokens, you may not see all the behavior change that you expect to see. All right. And what's important for you to do is to deliver the feedback that you have been given the authority to deliver, and to be consistent with that. So you're doing the right thing there. You've by providing that consistent feedback, you've reached the limit of what you want to be doing. Okay. Good question. What else?
I feel like I was struggling with that a little bit too. So I'm glad Laura asked that question. There's like one particular thing that one of the mentees has done, and every research summary, I've said the same thing. And then now I'm getting hesitant. Like, should I continue to say this? Cause I just feel like the A word, cause like, I just keep telling her like, hey, don't do that or whatever. Also, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, that's what Laura was like reminding everyone of, like, so I write too much. So like, I don't want to give them advice to lengthen it so much, because I don't want them to create a bad habit that I'm trying to like change of myself. But like, if I get an annotated bib that's like 4 sentences, like I'm struggling with like how much I should be telling them to write. Like,
yeah. So what, and you mentioned that last time too, Maddie, what is, this is a good question to dive into a little bit further. There is a standard that you are trying to get your mentees to, and then there is information or knowledge or a model that you want to provide that might go above and beyond that standard, right?
right. And I don't want to ask too much of them. Like, I don't want my feedback to be aversive. Like, oh, every time she emails me, she's telling me to write more. So like,
okay,
I'm trying to balance that.
What is one way that you could communicate both of those components to your mentees without seeming aversive? Let's open that up to everyone. How could Maddie, how could any of you ensure that you both help your mentees reach the standard, but also, if you have something to say that does go above and beyond, how can you also communicate to that to them as well? What do you guys think? There's nothing that says that the bounds of the mentor-mentee relationship has to end at feedback on an assignment. right? But you also don't want to be pushy, right? Communicating availability for further discussion is always something that is available. So you can give the feedback that is going to give your mentee the ability to get to the standard and then follow up. Hey, I had some more thoughts that I think go above and beyond what you need to do for this research summary. If you'd like more information, let me know. I'd be happy to email you. I'd be happy to meet. I'd be happy to talk, whatever it is that you are comfortable doing, right? So thinking about it in terms of meetings with Dr. Cohen are one thing. She requires those for the class, but I've met with just about every one of you for this class. All right. And those meetings go above and beyond what's necessary to meet the criteria. You guys will turn in a project based on the conversations that we have in this class, and you'll do fine. But you guys want to do better than fine. So you schedule meetings with me to go above and beyond. In class, though, and the feedback that I give you guys is going to be relative to the pre-established criteria. So finding ways to establish the contingency that needs to be met, but the ability to go above and beyond, I think that's the balance that you're probably looking for, right, Maddie? Does that sound meaningful?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Like I even thought about offering, like when I was describing to her what I thought would be, what she needed to turn in, I thought about sending her one of my research summaries on a different article just to provide like a model. But then I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And her think like, this is what I need, like to be overwhelmed and to assume that I'm like requiring this of her. So then I didn't do that. But I
Yeah.
guess what you're saying is I can provide that, like you said, I can tell her like, hey, I'm always available to meet on this day at this time, and we can like go into this further.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, all of you have gotten 25 out of 25 on a research summary at some point. And you know that, so you know that anything of that quality or above will get you 25 out of 25. What your job, part of what your job is as a mentor to learn is what behavior is your mentee motivated in admitting? Are they interested in admitting that 25 out of 25, or are they interested in admitting a 40 out of 25? And if there's no EO to get that additional information, it'll be abundantly clear, right? Because you're probably not going to get them to a 25 out of 25. But if you're providing feedback that gives them the opportunity to take the next step and they take it, that shows you that they are rising to the ceiling that you are providing. And you can always scale that back. Like, hey, just so you know, I thought this was fantastic. I think that you never want to lower the expectation, but you can say like this might be approaching something more like what you would put in a lit review, more than is necessary for a research summary, but I highly encourage you to keep doing it for your own practice. Something like there are lots of autoclitics that you guys can use to moderate your behavior, modify your verbal behavior to give that context and give that meaning so they understand what the purpose of the feedback that you are giving is. And I think that's probably what I'm trying to say is it comes down to understanding the context of the specific feedback you are getting. What is the feedback I need to pass this assignment? What is the feedback that I need to go above and beyond this assignment? What is the feedback I need to better understand the content of the assignment? I think all three of those are important. Good. What else? What other questions, problems, concerns are you guys facing with your mentees?
My mentee said that there wasn't much leeway with Dr. Cohane's due dates. Is it possible for us to get those?
Sorry, I interrupted.
Cutting in and out and inadvertently interrupted again, Molly. No worries. Go ahead, Isaac. You want the due dates for Dr. Cohane? Yeah.
Yeah, because she gave it to me like on Friday, and then she was like, "It's due on Sunday" or something like that, and it was like I was in Texas with no electricity, and so I'm like, "Well, I can't give it to you now," so I gave it to her on Monday, and she said that like it was like due or something. Yeah, so like it would be nice to have those due dates, just so I can know like when is the right time. Because I know we had previously talked about the rule of thumb is giving them the feedback within a week. But if Dr. Cohane has set dates, I would love to give it to her beforehand.
And yes, I need to get you those dates. That is a bottom line. But what is kind of the more significant contingency at play there? As a class on mentorship, what am I going to tell you?
To have the mentees be on top of their deadlines.
Absolutely. It's incumbent on them to get you the information in enough time. Now, if you establish that 48 hours ahead of time is okay, then great, that's on you. If you want a week, if you want 2 weeks, within reason, set deadlines for them to get things to you. And think of the contingency that I put in place for grading at the end of the semester. I guarantee you, if you turn it in, I will have it graded. I only guarantee that it will be graded by the time grades are due if it's turned in by Wednesday at 11:55 p.m. Right? Same thing for you. I'll give you the feedback, but I need 72 hours. If you turn in with less than 72 hours to go, there's no guarantee that I will get you the feedback in time. I will try, but you don't get to push me. You don't get to harass me for it. And if you turn it in and don't do well, that's on you. If you get it to me within that 72 or before that 72 hours, it's on me. All right. So establishing those types of relative guidelines, I think, is really, really important. And again, yes, I'll get you that schedule from Dr. Cohen, and I need to follow up with her. But that's their responsibility, right? It's hard as a student mentoring another student to internalize that and be okay with like being really contingent in that situation. But I do think that it's important. I really do. All right. Molly, do you want to? Did you just? There you go. Coming back. Molly, do you want to try and?
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi's kind of.
Yeah. Try number 2. Not gonna happen.
I didn't mean to say her name. She's not an ABA major, and she all the time. I just kind of don't really know what I'm supposed to be getting from her, and I haven't heard back from her.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a kind of carve out scenario, and I think it's important for you guys, for not many of you have the non-ABA majors. It's important to be able to kind of scale your standards based on the needs of individuals. It's hard when you don't know what the outcome is, and I hope Molly can either hear this or watch this later. But it's a challenge when you don't know what bar your mentee is trying to pass, or whoever you end up supervising is trying to get through. But having a conversation with them trying to establish what their background knowledge is, trying to establish where they are and what you think they need is a conversation that has to happen. Molly, go back and watch this later so you can get the full response.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay. But trying to really have an understanding of and establish what the needs of that person are is important. And sometimes that, in your situation, that might mean reaching out to Dr. Cohane and asking her directly, what is the expectation for the student? Is it the same as when I took your class? Because that's the standard that you guys are starting with, right? The standard that your standard is what you did in each of these classes. And if that's not the appropriate standard, you need to be able to adjust your expectations accordingly, right? So that's step one, is identify the standard. Identify what it is that you are trying to get your mentee to.
Okay. Yeah, I can reach out to Dr. Cohane. That might be a little easier.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do in that
I just
situation.
didn't want to get her in trouble or anything. I don't
Yeah. No.
Okay.
It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be at all.
Okay, thank you.
Good. And I think all of these are really important questions. Each one of you are going to run into your own unique set of circumstances with your mentees. But while each of you may not experience all of these now, you will experience all of them at some point in the future. So figuring out how and hearing how other people address those concerns is always a good thing. Really quickly, what are a couple of things that you've been really happy about, really pleased with your mentees?
The timeliness of sending research summaries been on point. When I
Awesome.
mean all week, she's been sending me 2 or 3, and I'm like, well, geez. But she's been really good. It's been
Good.
awesome. And it's awesome to see, sorry, I don't mean to take up all the time.
No.
It's awesome to see that behavior change already so quickly. Like she sent me maybe 4 research summaries already, and she's taken my feedback and has already switched to, okay, this is what I need to do now. I'm already seeing that behavior change in some aspects of her research summaries.
That's fantastic. And that is the point from the mentee perspective is to get that more or closer to immediate feedback they can incorporate right away. That is honestly not tied to a standard. That's not tied to a grade. It's just pure feedback. And that's really great to see. So I hope that each of you are experiencing that in some way, shape, or form. Good. One more. Something else that you're seeing that you're impressed with or happy with.
My mentee is asking me questions that challenge me and like things that I'm not super confident in.
Awesome.
And so it's motivating me to learn more. And so I like that.
Good. And I think that the selection of classes that you guys are mentoring this semester is perfect for that. 547 is obviously a very challenging class with a lot of work, and those quizzes are they are what they are, and that content is always good to revisit. And from the practicum standpoint, working with people who are just starting and really re-immersing yourself in those foundational pieces and how to teach them is going to help so much as you guys become mentors down the line and are teaching new line technicians and are teaching brand new people into the field that don't know, forget a learn unit. They've never sat down with a kid before. They've never taken a piece of data before. So getting those fundamentals is really, it really re-grounds you in what it is that we do. And that's just an invaluable opportunity. Awesome. Well, keep up the good work. Keep up the the good feedback that you guys are giving. And I want to, many of you have reached out to me if you've had a concern with your mentee so far. Keep those coming. I'd also love to hear some good things that are happening as well. So it's not because when I just get that and not negative feedback, but the behaviors that need corrections, I think that's all that anyone's experiencing. So let me know the good things that are happening too, so that I can pass that along to the group. Awesome. All right.
Dr. Shammer, before we move on from Menti, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
In regards to Moodle, if you scroll all the way down, that's where I submit my feedback that I've given to her. And I see that you did it for, it says research summaries 1 through 10. That's for both the classes, right?
Yeah. So you only need to turn in for, if you have, just about all of you have mentees in either 2 mentees or mentees in 2 classes. You only need to turn in your feedback for one of your mentees in one of the classes. So you can either do 547 or 534 or 539, whatever is most appropriate and meaningful for you. And what I recommend is turn in the one that you want the most feedback on. So, for your 547 guys, that's probably, you're probably going to want more feedback on the feedback that you are giving in 547 than you would for 539. If you have one in the same course, then select the more challenging of the 2, just so you can get those learning units on the harder thing. All right. I will tell you right now, I don't know, as I sit here right now, I don't know what behavior it would take from you guys to get points deducted from those assignments. I will give you all the feedback you need and you'll get full credit, right? I mean, being late on everything is probably the only thing. That is purely about learning, not about meeting a standard. So if you give feedback that I disagree with or that we identify as incorrect, that's not going to get a point deduction. That's just going to be, make sure to do this in the future. All right. So turn in the mentee work or mentor work that you want feedback on. Okay.
Wait, don't hate me. I just turn in whichever one I get first and I complete it and remember to turn it into Moodle.
That's fine. I mean,
again,
it's your feedback. I just told you you're not going to get points deducted. So do moderate your behavior however you want in the future. If that's easiest for you and what you need to do to get it done, that's going to get you the same score as if you select which one you turn in. So that's
okay.
On you. Okay.
Just tell me if I do it wrong in my comments on Moodle.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and jump into our verbal behavior discussion, because that's what we're all actually here for, that we want to talk about. We are jumping into the pie charts tonight. This is going to take us pretty much through the rest of the semester and hopefully lead us to some really rich conversations about why these things are here, why they are significant, hopefully clear things up. If you have procedural questions, we can by all means talk about those. There's not, other than the overall topic, there's not much structure to where I want to go for each of these. There are definitely components or pieces that I will make sure I want to touch on for each circle, for each pie. But these conversations are largely going to be led by your interests and your questions and where you want to go with them. Okay. So as we start off, with these pre-verbal foundational cusp and capabilities, but before we even set on to that, let's take a quick second and review one more time the difference between a cusp and capability. And the reason that I want to do this is I don't want you guys to base the information that we talk about here for any of these things on what you have been told. I want you to question, I want you to challenge, I want you to understand. And something like the definition of a cusp and the definition of a capability, while it seems like it should lead to a black and white, I want you guys to understand and make sure that you're comfortable with more than just the intraverbal. Okay? What is a cusp? What is a cusp? What is a capability? Who wants to take a stab? What is a verbal behavior cusp?
A cusp is when a cusp is induced, new learning that was not possible before is now possible.
Okay. And what allows for that learning to occur?
The client or the individual we've now conditioned reinforcement for something novel, a novel stimuli, or what was a neutral stimuli is now a conditioned reinforcer.
Okay, good. So cusps operate by changing the community of reinforcement. That's the at their basic level, that is what is operating with cusps. Okay, there are new conditioned reinforcers that allow you to contact new things, and we learn new things. All right, what does a capability do? Somebody can do it. What does a capability do?
It changes the way that the individual accesses their environment.
Yes. How accessing the environment, I like those words, but go further. Talk about that.
Accessing new contingencies. Am I in the wrong?
Yeah. You guys are right there. And what you're actually using specific language that's not the exact language that I use for this intraverbal definition. It's not wrong, but I want to make sure that we get to the same point. All right. So both Clarissa and Courtney, I like both of the things that you guys said. The way that I look at a capability is it allows you to learn in new ways. Yeah, and Clarissa, I saw you mouthing that as I went. So learning through new contingencies, Courtney, that is absolutely an appropriate way of looking at it. Clarissa, contacting the environment in new ways, that's right there. But contacting the environment, learning through new contingencies, those don't quite get at that core idea of learning in a completely new way. All right. There are lots of things that allow us to contact new things. There are very few things that allow us to learn in new ways. All right.
So learning in new ways that they couldn't before?
Yes.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I was mid sip. Yes. That's the idea of induction, right? Is that you're doing something that you could not before because of this cusp or this capability. All right. There are developmental cusps in child development. If any of you were child psychs in undergrad, the idea of a developmental cusp is very common. Behavioral cusps as a field of study or as a behavior of interest are out there. If you read the Rosales, Ruiz, and Bear article that was on behavioral cusps in general that were not tied to verbal cusps. And then VBA goes further to focus on this idea of verbal behavior cusps and capabilities. I think it is critically important to understand that, and the fact that we are now looking at pie charts instead of pyramids is evidence of this, that this is still an evolving field of study, especially when we get down here, right? These cusps and capabilities look very, very, very different than what the backside of the pyramid, the old pyramids, looked like. That means our understanding of what those more advanced cusp and capabilities are have changed just in the last few years. And as new dissertations come out, as new research is conducted, particularly, sorry, I went too far, on the social learning, there's a lot of new understanding that is coming out of this circle in particular. When it comes to the print cusps, as we continue to push the age and level of student that we are doing research with and the academic areas that we are doing research with, our understanding of print cusps are going to change. So none of these are static. These are all very much still growing. These are, our understanding of these are all very much still being furthered by new data. And that is never going to stop. And it's not also, you know, just it's so present when we look at this idea of naming, right? Naming, which we will get to in a few months, or in a few weeks, is it is both everything and nothing, because there's just so much that we still don't know, right? And as a field that prides itself on a truth, that is very, very challenging for us. We know that the data will show us the way eventually, but we're not there yet. But we still have to speak as if we are, and that creates not problems, but that pushes us forward. That continues to push us forward. So tonight, for the next half hour or so, we're going to be focused on the pre-verbal foundations. We're going to be focusing on the cusps that are necessary for one to even get ready to be verbal. All right. So condition reinforcement for 2D stimuli, condition reinforcement for 3D stimuli, faces, voices, parroting, see-do. What's the common thread here? What are we looking at? What are we, why are these here? What are these cusps? What are these behaviors?
Observing responses.
Good, they're observing responses. What does that mean?
Observing stimuli in your environment.
Okay.
Acknowledging stimuli in your environment.
Okay, good. And the critical piece to these is that all of these are condition reinforcement for. All right. What we have are a set of behaviors or a set of stimuli that elicit the same behavior. All right. Every single one of these is looking at the behavior of observation through the lens of condition reinforcement. All right. If we look at all of these between see-do to 2D, 3D to faces to voices in particular, how do we do this? How do we start this? Where does this start? How does one begin the process of acquiring pre-verbal foundational cusps?
Starts in the womb.
Good, Isaac. So this starts as a natural process. This starts in the womb, right? And from a developmental psychologists and pediatricians, they get this idea, right? Behavior analysts that don't study verbal behavior have a much harder time with this. But what we have to understand is the process of pairing happens in utero. And what I think, so first of all, what is getting paired?
Voice.
Okay, is that that's the neutral stimulus, so the unconditioned stimulus, right? What is it getting paired with?
Like them being fed.
Okay.
Primary,
What else?
primary reinforcers
Yeah.
are being met. Like Christine said, like they're accessing food and then they're hearing the mother's voice, so that pairing occurs.
Okay. So does that mean that we only talk to our kids while we're feeding, while they're in utero? No. So what are the other condition reinforcers? What other condition reinforcers or what other reinforcers are there that are used as conditioning agents for voices? All right, so we're stuck because we are thinking of stimulus added, right, in order to pair. The environment is part of any conditioning, especially when it comes to custom capabilities. The environment is part of any conditioning procedure. All right, and we need to be able to take that into account. What are the stimuli in the environment that are not necessarily changing, that are not that are ever present, that are going to impact the stimuli that we are conditioning? What other aspect of the environment might serve as a condition reinforcer for voices in utero? I want you guys to imagine your like comfiest happy place environment. Rianne, you had a light bulb go off. You lost your confidence. What are you thinking?
Well, I don't want to say, is it sensory? Like,
yeah, it's sensory.
Yeah.
It's sensory. What is the sensory environment, we are told, in the womb?
I just realized I was on mute. You're in amniotic fluid, like you're in water.
Okay, so there's water. There's that like.
So is it like the sound, like the like you're in water? So when you speak, like is it the feeling? Like are they like is it touch? Like
So there's touch is definitely one of the things that I'm thinking of. How many of you this past week, when it was 26 degrees outside, ran outside? How many of you got in your pajamas, and got under the covers, and you just sat there kind of like this, and you were happy? That was me for sure. Warmth is a conditioned reinforcer. It is an unconditioned reinforcer. Warmth is a natural reinforcer. And that is the environment that is ever present in and necessary for life in utero. What's the saying? You're baking a baby, right? That's there for a reason. You got one in the oven, right? That is meaningful. That is necessary for life. And that is an unconditioned reinforcer for a fetus in utero. So that warmth is ever present. That is what voice is being paired with. Then you add touch on that. Touch actually is going to become a conditioned reinforcer for the same reasons, right? And then you add food with your voices and the touch. And the whole environment creates this conditioned reinforcement for voices. All right. I wish that I could tell you that I knew definitively why some of our children, vis-a-vis this conversation, why some of our children are born and voices are not a conditioned reinforcer. I don't. That is a question that by all intents and purposes should be answerable. Not through not through reversal design, obviously, but through a large group study. I think that would be something that you could measure, but you cannot ethically tell a parent, don't talk to your child in utero, right? You can't ethically alter any of those things. So it would have to be a natural experiment. But I have to believe that the level of conditioned reinforcement for voices is tied to that. Now, our children who have faulty repertoires, like significantly delayed and faulty repertoires, I wonder if that is a result of purely of conditioning, or if something like autism does have a genetic component that is yet to be discovered. Does that impact their ability to contact voices as a stimulus in utero? Not as a reinforcer, but contact voices as a stimulus in utero, such that it's not able to be paired in the same way. Does that make sense? And again, I don't know. I don't have any data to support that, but that's the thought that makes the most sense to me, because you definitely have parents that talk to their kids, they do all the things right, but the child is still delayed and does not have that conditioned reinforcement for voices, which sets off the chain reaction for everything else. So to me, there's got to be some other physical issue that prevents contact with the stimulus. They're getting food, right? They're getting warmth. They're being touched. They got all the reinforcers are there. The only other thing that makes sense to me is that the stimulus is not there. The stimulus that is being conditioned is not there.
They're not perceiving the voice.
Yes, exactly. So whether that is physical in the fetus, whether that is physical in the womb, whatever that is, and I wish we knew more, but that's the thing that makes the most sense to me. All right. Now, child is born. Voices are a conditioned reinforcer. What comes next?
Faces.
Faces, absolutely. Has anyone read the newborn studies on voices and faces, like the developmental literature, not the behavioral literature? It's some crazy thing. Like within, I want to say it's like 8 seconds, babies are able to respond neurologically, and maybe it's more than 8 seconds because I don't know how we would measure that, but within a few minutes, they're able to respond to the mother's voice. All right. A child can't see. Go ahead, Courtney. Go ahead, Courtney.
I just saw a video, I think it was an article on Facebook, that it's the view of like the baby, and then within time, like 2 months, 3 months, you can see that, let's say the father is behind the mom, they can only see some sort of the face of the mom, but then it gradually increases as they get older.
Absolutely. So within a few minutes, the baby can see, you know, that far, then that far, then that far, then that far, and then they can distinguish colors and shapes and all those things. What's significant? So if we know, I think we all have to accept some other authorities that the baby can't see the face right away, right? So let's go back to the condition reinforcement for voices, but let's say the whole thing, condition reinforcement for observing voices. All right. To me, it's so important to understand that it's not condition reinforcement for voices that conditions faces. Right? Because I can be contacting a condition reinforcer for a voice while observing anything, right? I can be looking at a TV, I can be looking at a book, I can be looking outside, I can be looking at my hand. It's the condition reinforcement for the observation of a voice that emits the orienting behavior to set the stage to condition a face, right? It's not just that pairing. It's not just voice with face. It's that voice elicits a response. That response is observation, is an observing response. And now I am viewing something specifically that is being paired with a voice. What's more important is it is the thing that actually emits said voice, right? They've done additional studies with newborns and with infants that the mouth is actually the first thing that a child observes on the face before the eyes, before any other part of the face. They observe the mouth first. That moves up to the eyes as vision becomes more clear, as the eyes become a stimulus that change more, then the eyes become a condition reinforcer for observing responses. You don't want a child to just stare at you in the eyes. You don't want a child that just stares at your mouth. You want a child to be able to observe all the different components of the face. So then, taking that idea, think about the face conditioning procedure. You put stickers on your face, you put a funny nose on, you put something blowy in your mouth, you put big ears on. You make all the pieces of your face observable, right? You make all the ideas of your face or the components of your face observable, and make them more salient such that they will become conditioned. Okay? Condition reinforcement for observing voices sets the stage for condition reinforcement for observing faces. All right? Once voices and faces are conditioned, sorry, people are saying something in the chat and I don't have the chat box up, so I hope nothing too important has been said. All right. Once faces and voices are conditioned. So any questions about those two? before we go on? Okay, and I know I haven't gotten into the protocols yet so much, but that's okay. Once voices and faces are conditioned, what have we set the stage for? How are voices and faces different maybe from the other 4 pieces of the pie that we have here?
You're conditioning interacting with another person in some
Okay.
capacity.
Good. So, yeah. Yep, I agree with that. What else?
Come on, Christine, you're the queen of the babies. This is your moment.
Just calling you out. Where I'm fishing a little bit. Going back to the conversation of cost versus capabilities. Is there a way that we could maybe look at the combination of voices and faces as a capability, as relative to the other 4 that are here? Can we identify, is there a way that children change the way in which they learn once voices and faces are conditioning reinforcers?
They can learn from people.
Okay.
I was going to say observing behaviors versus stimuli. But I don't
That's
know.
that's the line that I'm thinking on too. If faces are not a condition reinforcer, then I can't guide orientation. Some stimulus has to guide orientation, right? But if voices and faces, I can go like that and a child will look and a child will attend in the direction that I'm attending to. That allows them to contact things, not just in a way they could not before, but things that they could not before. Or sorry, other way around. Not just things they could not before, but in a way they could not before. If voices and faces are not a condition reinforcer, then my voice and face are not going to direct you to attend to new stimuli or to attend anywhere in the environment. The only way for you to come in contact with stimuli for the environment is directly. Got to bump into the damn thing, right? I think now, do just voices or just faces get you there? I don't know. It seems like faces is necessary. Voices is pretty necessary for faces, but I don't know if it's the interaction between the two that allows for that type of learning, or if it is just faces. I don't know. But I think that there's a way of looking at those 2 observing responses in particular as the possibly a pre-verbal capability as opposed to a cusp. You know, you think of the ways that our older children who do not have voices and faces as condition reinforcers for observing responses. I mean, you are hand over hand, you are like horse blinders, you are doing anything and everything that you can to get them to attend to the thing so that you can condition it. But for those who do have voices and faces, they're looking at you, you're looking at the thing, they look at the thing, and that's conditioning. That interaction in and of itself. If that doesn't define capability to me, maybe the voice is, well, 1, it can act as a conditioning agent, but 2, it can add motivation or it can add additional reinforcement to that stimulus, right? There's lots of different ways to look at it. But I think that there's an argument for outsized significance for voices and faces as a capability, as opposed to conditional reinforcement for 2D and 3D stimuli. Those are going to allow you to learn new things. I don't know. What do you guys think? Someone disagree with me. No one's up for it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm not agreeing with you, but I have. I'm
Damn.
not there yet.
Go ahead.
But so I ran. I haven't worked with littles in a really long time, but back when I did, we used to do a lot of rotated protocols with faces and voices, which I think is really good. Like you're saying about like having that relationship. But then I also remember running faces, voices, and it was called GMI at the time, but now we call it condition reinforcement for CDU correspondence. How would we, like now I'm thinking about it, like if they don't currently have faces and voices and repertoire, why would they be watching what I'm doing and then doing that thing? Like, is it possible to induce all three of those simultaneously, or is one a prereq for the next?
What do you guys think?
I think, oh, go ahead.
Nope, you go.
Okay. Dun dun dun. I think in order for them to this is just me spitballing. In order for them to have like that CDU correspondence, to me, they would have to have faces and voices, because CDU, me telling you what to do, and you have to see me do it. They have to have that. I don't know. Like I said, I'm spitballing.
No, what you're saying makes sense because it's a verbal antecedent, so I would think they'd have to have voices, and then you're providing an action. So if they're not attending to your face or your body, like I don't see how they would do that. But I've since the pie chart, like I don't really understand the pyramids. I love the pie chart, but like the pyramids, it was like I'm not gonna say it right.
Hierarchical.
It was like a hierarchy, whereas with the pie charts, I feel like it's more it's harder to determine how cusps within the same pie relate to one another, like in terms of prereqs.
So a major reason and Clarissa, I want you to be able to chime in what you were going to say, but a major reason that we switched from the pyramids to the pies was because we all got sick of explaining to everybody that they are not hierarchical. There are definitely prerequisites for some of these things, but it was never meant to be one, then the next, then the next, then the next, then the next. And this visualizes that so much more clearly, without question. So one, I'm glad it's achieved its purpose, but two, back to the question at hand. Clarissa, go.
I think that you guys are bringing up some really good points, and I just have one other wrench to throw in here, in that with the CDU correspondence, it's not necessarily under the antecedent of do this. It's the actual correspondence, like I'm waving and you're waving, or the kid's waving and they see themselves waving in the mirror. So it's the correspondence rather than the things on the outside.
Yeah.
I don't know if that adds anything.
No, that absolutely does.
You're right. And I realized that as you were saying it, I was like thinking about it, because in the like the probes for the protocol, there's no reinforcement, like prosthetic or generalized reinforcement. Like the correspondence is the natural reinforcer. Like them doing the thing is the reinforcer. So that does make sense.
Anyone else? Has anyone ever done that with a child who, if nothing else, does not have a strong voice and face repertoire? How do you do that procedure for those kids?
In my experience, I used the mirror protocol, and we had to walk it back entirely to like conditioning the mirror itself. So we were like sticking gummies on the mirror and like doing all kinds of crazy stuff to get him
So
to even
when you're doing the mirror protocol, and a kid gets it right, what do you do?
For me, lots of things. It depends on the kid, really. Like we could get some edibles, we could do cheers in the mirror.
You shove an edible in their mouth as fast as humanly possible, right?
Yeah, depending on the kid.
Depending on the kid, absolutely. But that's what you're doing. You've accepted that you cheering is probably not going to get it done because faces are not a condition reinforcer, and therefore cheering has not become a condition reinforcer. So Clarissa, you are absolutely right. While we want to make sure that do this is the antecedent, that's kind of getting conditioned, but it is the correspondence that is the natural reinforcer, and that's getting paired. Yeah, I mean, ideally what you want in that pairing to not make it operant, to keep it respondent, is you're behind the kid in the mirror doing this, and they're in front of you doing this, and then you're both there doing this, so that they attack the gummy while they're doing this and you're doing this, right? So, okay, yeah. GMI does not require voices or faces to condition reinforcer. Now, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier, but it is not necessarily a prerequisite. All right? And think that idea starts to become really critical to the whole package, the rotated protocol package that we are discussing here, right? So how does that impact? So let me ask it two ways. How does that idea impact parroting 2D and 3D stimuli? And how does that change when voices and faces are condition reinforcers?
Kind of like you said, if faces are they have condition reinforcement for faces, and I take something and I put it down on the table and then they look at it without me being that condition reinforcement, the thing on the table doesn't hold any reinforcing value. Like they're not even going to notice that it's there. Like you said, they would literally have to run into it. Like, so for me, presenting it to them kind of initiates like that orientation to me with the thing that I'm holding.
Absolutely. Perfect. And I love how you said that. So if faces are a condition reinforcer and I hold a thing right here, that's pairing, right? And then I put it down, and the first time what's going to happen? They're still going to look at me. But then I'm going to keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. And then as soon as I get an observing response, boom, praise, edible, something, right? And now I've reinforced a new behavior, orienting to a three-dimensional stimulus. All right. I really think, the more I talk about it, the more I think that at least faces meets the definition for a capability. What about 2D and 3D stimuli? What about C-do? What about parroting? Do any of those others meet that definition?
Previously, generalized imitation was a capability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it still? Is C-do correspondence now a capability?
Does it meet that definition?
I would say so.
Okay. Anyone else? So, quick review. C-do correspondence is where I see, I do, and the relationship between what I'm seeing and what I'm doing serves as the reinforcer for seeing and doing. Right? So, let me put it this way. This is, let me phrase it this way. The question to ask is, how would we learn in a new way when see-do correspondence is present?
You can learn from modeling.
Okay, good. So how, give me the other side of that. What's prior to see-do, what do I need to do? How am I going to learn? Prior to see-do, how am I going to learn things? Can I learn things?
It would have to be localized to the face and the voice. Like there wouldn't be imitation of using the rest of the body.
Okay. Any other ways?
I feel like I talk too much, guys. Y'all gotta pitch in sometimes too, okay? Or cut me off. But I would say, kind of going along with what Maddie said, is you would also potentially be prompt dependent.
Okay.
Like dependent on others to meet your goals, I guess.
I want say it in not an applied way. That's right. Okay. But we're not talking about goals. Don't.
Dependent on others to access their environment.
Good. To contact contingencies, to contact stimuli, right? Excellent. To access their environment. Okay. Hand over hand prompts. That's the behavior change. Going from a hand over hand prompt or physically running your body into contact with a stimulus versus being able to model and be able to contact the stimulus the same way. All right. For faces, if we accept the idea that might have some capability to it, and for see-do, does the presence of, I'm going to say the cusp to start, necessarily mean that the capability is present? Can see-do, let's start with that one, because that's been established for some time. Can see-do function as a cusp, but not a capability?
No. Right, all cusp are capabilities, right? Or am I saying it wrong? I can't hear.
Someone was present. Are we back? No. Okay, good. Christine, were you talking? Were you saying something? Your box is.
I was saying all cusp are like all capabilities are cusp, but not all cusp are capabilities, right?
Yes, that is true. But I guess what I'm asking is, can the way that we typically say it is a cusp that is a capability. All right. So given that, can we have a cusp that is a capability not function as a capability? meaning, can I get through the mirror protocol, but not yet learn in a new way? Can I have that see-do correspondence, but not learn in a new way?
Well, if you look at the prereqs for model learn units, there are several things that they have to have, including see-do correspondence. So as soon as see-do correspondence is induced, doesn't necessarily mean you could benefit from a different type of learn unit instruction.
Good, excellent. And I really like that idea. Sorry, Larissa, I just saw your errorlessly comment from like 5 minutes ago. I'm really bad at reading the chat. So, but yes, that is exactly what we were talking about. When we get to naming in particular, one of the things that I'm going to challenge you guys with is this idea of omitting naming behaviors. All right. Most people, very smart people, say that there's no such thing as a naming behavior. And I am not as smart as those people, but I still vehemently disagree with them. And I think that applies here too. There is a difference between see-do as a cusp and see-do as a capability. And omitting that see-do cusp behavior does not necessarily mean that you are omitting the capability behavior. And you actually have to omit that capability behavior to contact reinforcement to induce the capability. You have to contact learning in a new way to reinforce that behavior, facilitating learning in a new way.
Well, Dr. Cohen used to say during her class that even though a learner might master a protocol, it is our duty, like as the provider, to provide programming that will induce that capability and like generalize that new form of learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? So we are in control of the environment, right? So we need to facilitate use of that new behavior to learn in a new way. So going like this, going like this, going like this, doesn't mean I'm going to learn anything new. Now, I learned those things in a new way, but that's not necessarily a generalized skill that allows me to contact new stimuli, new reinforcers, new environments until it actually happens. Now, the likelihood is much higher. The chances of me doing that by chance are much higher, but it still doesn't change the fact that until I emit that behavior and come in contact with a indirect reinforcer in some way, shape, or form, that I don't have that as a capability yet. Until I emit that as a capability behavior, I don't think one necessarily means the other. I think with faces, that fits that same definition. Just because I'm observing a face doesn't mean I'm going to orient where the face goes. So until that happens, faces is just a cusp. That fits for see-do. And as we'll see, I think that fits for naming as well.
That's what I was going to ask. I'm going to try to not talk about naming until we get to all of this.
I put it off as long as possible. I honestly, I do, because I know that's what everyone wants to talk about. But I make sure that we get there, that we have to, it's so important to understand everything that builds up to that, right? Because as I hope you're already seeing as we wrap up for tonight, the concepts that support all of these custom capabilities don't change, right? So looking at them, well, everything that we've spoken about tonight, we're gonna have the exact same conversation next week, and the exact same conversation the week after that, and after that, and after that, right? It's just the thing that we are talking about that's different. The structure, the ideas that we are using stay the same. Why? Because we're talking about condition reinforcers. Talking about how these experiences condition new stimuli and how we use either those new stimuli or the behaviors that those stimuli elicit, observing responses, to change our behavior down the line. All right. Okay. I'm going to leave it there for tonight. We didn't really talk about parroting. We're going to get there next week as we move into the listener component. All right. So be thinking about how that is a jumping off point, not just for the listener, but for the listener and speaker, or if it is one or the other, or not one or the other. But be thinking about how each of these starts to lead to listener and speaker behavior, how the presence or absence of each of these impact listener and speaker behavior, and keep thinking about that idea of our capabilities. All right, cool. Any questions? Good job. Good conversation. I, as always, love where this ends up and where this gets to go. Cool. A couple of you have emails out to me about some meetings for this week. I will respond to you guys right now. And other than that, I will see you all next Monday. In March already. How's
Dr.
that
Sam,
possible?
you are available this week?
I am, yes. There's some limited availability. Things are kind of filling up, but shoot me an email and I'll do what I can to get you in. Okay. And if not, then this weekend or next week. All right, Isaac? All right, cool. Have a good one, guys. Talk to you later.